Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 13 of digital marketing. Hopefully, everything's going smoothly. We're kind of coming up on the end of the semester, and hopefully, you're starting to prepare for your final assignments. I did, if you noticed, big news. I posted the final signups, and it looks like most teams have signed up at this point. So let me see. Out of the, I believe it's 7 teams we have. Right, it looks like 5, 6. I think 7 teams actually. I think everyone may have signed up already. I'll double check that, but I think that might be the case. So that's great news. If you haven't signed up, if somehow I'm miscounting, right, then please do as soon as possible so that we can get that schedule nailed down. Okay. Um, Well, it looks like Wednesday is a very popular time. So Wednesday, April 24th. So we will do our best to kind of get that all put together. Let me make sure. Got that right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyways, we will have that I'll double check some of those times, but we should have that all available. Okay. So other than that, other things to be thinking about is turning in your final projects and getting those documents all done and finishing up your final creative. This week, in addition to all that, there are some videos on making videos, right, and how to do video marketing. So that's up and live, and you should find that out. There is, in addition to that, there is a final reading on social CRM. So please make sure you've read that as well. And we should be all good in terms of the content for the class. There is one last week of videos that is already live. You can go ahead and watch it if you want. But it is reserved for next week on CRM and digital commerce. And of course, digital commerce we've mentioned quite a bit. CRM we've mentioned occasionally. So this is kind of just kind of additional content that you might look at in that space. I did have a bunch of questions about the final project, so I want to make sure I spend some time talking about those today. A bunch of people asked about the actual length of the presentation, and if you saw the email, it did say I'm expecting about a 20-minute presentation with about 5 minutes for question and answering and about 5 minutes for segueing. It does look like that Wednesday, the 24th, is already pretty packed, so I'm going to be doing a lot of back-to-backs. So we need to keep it right to that 20 minutes as much as possible, right? And essentially, there was a question, just speaking to a PowerPoint is based on our written project and showing examples, correct? And yes, that is. So I want you to develop, kind of treat this like a pitch meeting, right? It's as if I'm the company, and you're pitching me on your digital marketing plan that you're suggesting for the company, right? That's kind of the way to think of it. So kind of pursue it from that perspective. You want it to be quick, to the point, right? Succinct, with being a summary and some examples of the creative that you would suggest. So that is kind of essentially what I would suggest in that space. If you have any questions about that, I did say, one other comment I did say, I don't need everyone to present, but I would like everyone, I don't need everyone to present in equal amount, but I would like everyone to present, right? So I would like everyone to present at least part of the content for your group. There was one other question that came up that someone asked. They asked, and I've had this question a couple of times, where firms are looking to not use like MailChimp, but rather just send out a newsletter from their own personal email addresses. First of all, I would highly discourage that. I think using a tool like MailChimp or Constant Contact or Bronto or one of these is extremely useful. It provides you with analytics, which you can't get very easily through using your own email accounts, right? It provides you with the ability to maintain those email lists in a great way. And it has a number of benefits, and it's cheap, right? It's I think a Constant Contact account is like $100 for an entry level account, right? For a year, right? So we're talking less than $10 a month. It's definitely worth it for any business that's actually serious about email marketing. If I don't understand why they would want to just use like Outlook or something like that instead, it's worth it to pay for a service. I don't know of any way to easily um, do that kind of thing, that same kind of thing through Outlook. And so, there's some questions about managing that and doing emails. I mean, for $10 a month, right? You're much better off just paying someone to do it. I can't imagine a scenario where that's not worth it for them, right? I guess you could. I mean, this was done. People used to do this. They used to maintain a spreadsheet. They would keep track of all of it. They would coordinate those addresses. But quite frankly, the cost is just not, it's just not worth it in many cases. So that would be my answer. I don't think Outlook provides any kind of analytics. Someone was interested in it. They said they were going to look into Outlook 365, which is the web-based version of Outlook, and see if it made any kind of those tools available. Or if there are other options on like Google, like Gmail for doing email services. And to my understanding, there aren't many good options, but if someone has a good solution in this space that doesn't involve using one of the main email servers, I would recommend doing it. Another question that someone asked is if they wanted to send these emails, if you want to send emails through this platform, could you create HTML-based emails? I think, like if you're using Outlook as opposed to Constant Contact, I do think there's an ability to do that. Like you can kind of compose an email, but you would be doing it by hand. And this is again a reason why I would just pay $10 a month and use a regular service, right? Rather than using Outlook. They suggested maybe just doing a PDF. That's great. The only problem with PDFs is they're not clickable, right? There's a lot of issues. I mean, you can't create them, but at that point, you're taking so much time and energy. You might as well just create an HTML one. So I guess my basic suggestion is that using your own business email a server to do these kind of things is essentially a waste of money, because the amount of time and effort you're going to spend on it, you'd be much better investment to just put some of that money into another solution, another email service provider, right? So I don't think there's many solutions where that would work. Just double checking, maybe I was. And if they want to try it, most of them offer trial offers, right, which give you the ability to kind of go through, try it out ahead of time, to play around with it. So it's a little more pricey than I mentioned, but not bad. It's $20 per month for 500 email contacts for Constant Contact, right, for their basic setup. So it's it's $240 a year, but that's still a lot cheap. That's probably still worth it for most companies. And if it's a not-for-profit, the rates go down. So that obvious aspect to it as well, right? Where they can get a 20 to 30% discount off of those rates. Anyways, as I mentioned, highly recommend just going with one of the commercial providers, right? Rather than doing it yourself. I think if you, anyways. Let's see. Other kinds of other emails I've gotten. I think that's about it. I've gotten a lot of emails about the final project. Oh, there was one other one was about dealing with the formatting for the final project. People asked, what kind of format does it need to be in? Like, does it need to be double space, single space? It's not a big deal. We're going to grade most of these online, so whatever format you want to use is fine with me. A little spacing between sentences helps, but if you really like that single spaced look, I don't think that's a problem for either me or the grader to look at it from that perspective. I do want you to kind of make it look like a document that you could give to a C-suite officer, and they would think it was professionally put together and looked professional. So I want you to be consistent in whatever formatting decisions you make. I want to see references for information, right? Like if you're making a comment, I want to see some support for that comment, right? But I don't really care what the style of the references is. As long as I can read through the document, I see a fact, I see a reference or a citation, and I can go to a reference list somehow and match those up in a fairly intuitive way, right? That doesn't require some, you know, mysterious algebra that I don't know in order to do, right? Then go ahead and do that. You know, so most standard probably is like a numbered list where reference one matches up reference one, or year and author, or year and source, right? Something along those lines, right? So don't worry too much about that. I've had a bunch of questions about the creative content. Think about the creative content in terms of, I want to see the equivalent amounts of content that you would create if you were creating a mini site for this campaign, right? So, you know, if you're doing an email, that counts for roughly 1 page of a website, right? If you're doing social media, then, you know, if it's Twitter, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 posts, those count as roughly 1 page, right? Facebook, maybe a couple posts, right? They usually tend to be a little bit longer and more in depth. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of the amount of content, right? And I'm not going to be strict about this, right? But if you are substantially less than what I think of as a mini site of content, then you'll get penalized for it. If you're more than that, you're not getting penalized, so no worries on that respect. Speaking of which, several people asked about the length of the final report, and they said, do we have to cut it back to 15 pages? And the answer is no. I usually just put 15 pages in the original document just not to scare people off, right? But I assume that most of you are going to be turning in 20, 30, 40. I've even seen a 50-page document, 60-page document get turned in. So that's okay. So that's it for comments and questions I've gotten in. If anybody watching has a comment or question, please put it in shortly. I'm now going to switch over to talking about the creative bravery content. So let me pull that up and we'll discuss that. So wrong one. So this was the reading that was part of, it's actually a Think with Google reading, which I highly recommend if you're interested in kind of state-of-the-art Google marketing, digital marketing, especially if you're interested from the perspective of what does Google think about it, right? I highly recommend taking a look at the Think with Google website blog and actually potentially subscribing to their newsletter updates. They're very interesting, I find, a lot of times. Let's pull up the actual slides. Okay, pull it back to the original one. Okay, so this is, as I said, the Brave content reading. Let's grab this window correctly. There we go. Okay. So the reading discusses a lot this idea of creative bravery, right? And what it means by that, and what I find really interesting, is that in the digital marketing world, right, you're no longer bound by the standards of traditional marketing. So traditional marketing often had things like page formats. So when you wanted to create an ad for a magazine, you couldn't be that creative. You essentially had an 8.5, 11, or, you know, slightly bigger piece of newspaper that you were able to put on. You had some colors. People would try some creativity, like putting on scratch and sniff and things like that. But digital really gives you brand new ways to advertise, right? And when I think of it, when I think of more like one of the first examples of creative bravery, I think of Hotmail, right? And Hotmail, for those of you who don't know, right, was an email that was web-based, right? And one of the interesting things about Hotmail was that it started out with zero marketing budget, right? And you got to remember, you got to come back to the fact that this was a case where when Hotmail launches, nothing like it really existed. Before Hotmail, most people had essentially had email that was provided to them by their internet service provider. So if you had a CompuServe account, you had a CompuServe email. If you had an AOL account, you had an AOL email. The idea of having a email service provider that was distinct from your ISP was a unique concept. So trying to convince people this was a good idea was going to be a hard selling point, and yet Hotmail put no money into creating it. Right now, Hotmail was started. Despite that fact, Hotmail started in July 1996, and by the end of the month, it had 20,000 subscribers, and by the end of the year, in January 1997, they had 1 million subscribers. So how did they do that with no marketing budget? Well, essentially, they had a little tagline at the end of every single email message that sent out that said, "Get free email at Hotmail." And and if you clicked on the word Hotmail, it would take you to the website, right? And this was new. This was nothing anyone had ever done. No one thought about putting advertising in other people's email, right? So you'd write your email to your friend about whatever you were doing on Hotmail, and at the bottom of it would say, "Get your free email at Hotmail." And so they would get this instant way to promote the virality of their content, right? To virally spread the Hotmail idea. But that was not something anyone had ever thought of before. It was clearly a brave way of thinking about content. So Hotmail creative content really creates a unique experience for the consumers, right? It differentiates the brand, it establishes the brand, and it promotes messages in ways that are hard to promote other ways. Like how do you promote the message to sign up for Hotmail, right? When you don't have any marketing budget. It allows you to build new formats of old, right? All types of formats are open. You can do video shorts, you can do social media, you can do augmented reality, but you want to keep some aspect of the brand identity constant. You know, you probably want to use the same logo, the same taglines and slogans, and the same colors. And you don't have to do this in a purely creative way. You can use analytics, right? So you can release different pieces of content. Maybe Hotmail could try up different wordings of the signature file, right? You can do A/B testing on them, right? You can try and fail fast. You can create a single piece of content, see if it works, and then see if there's additional content that can help you out, right? And it gives you new insights in the consumer base. And so, a great example of this is the fact that YouTube actually and Google came up with this idea of creating 6-second ads. 6-second ads. So they did this, and this was, most people thought that this wasn't going to work very well, right? And they didn't want people to kind of work with it, so they wanted to convince people that you could buy a 6-second ad on YouTube and they would actually tell an interesting story. In order to do that, they teamed up with a bunch of advertising companies and had them recreate classic stories using basically a 6-second ad and nothing else, right? To show that yes, you could create this content. So let me try and pull a couple of these up, and I highly recommend you take a look at this. The easiest way to find it is you go to the YouTube advertisers account, and you basically look for 6-second storytelling. Let me pull this up. So, okay, okay. So here is the ad. Here is the YouTube page, right? And as you'll be able to see, right, in many cases, it's kind of adding in, it's just retelling the story with these 6-second ads. Okay, let me pull this off. Shut down that page, and now it should work for me to capture the audio. Okay. So here's one about Hamlet. Right. Here's one about Moby Dick. Here's one about Darwin. I don't actually know this one. Oh, this is grapes. No.
How those happy thoughts treating you?
Peter Pan. Dracula. Anyways, you can go on and on. There's a bunch of them. Let me see if I can find the ones that actually were my favorite. Let me see if I can get those real quick. Let's see. I'll turn this back on. Turn that off. So my favorite are the Little Red Riding Hood ones, and they actually won an award. Let's see if we can find them. Of course, it's not showing up where it was before. As always, when I try and do something. So a lot of these were premiered at Sundance, actually, just to also get some exposure to YouTube. Wow. This one is just not showing up for me. Give me 1 second. I should be able to pull it up pretty quick. I'll just go back to where it was before. Just didn't look far enough, I bet. Oop, let's turn it off. No, I saw it before. Hold on 1 second, and I should be able to pull it up pretty quickly. I know where it is in their playlist, so that's probably the easiest way to do it. Okay, here we go. So this actually now has, so this one actually now, the way you're going to see it, it's a bunch of them strung together, I believe.
I set out with the best intentions.
Oh, this is actually a longer one. This is not the one I'm watching.
I found myself in unwelcome situations.
So this is the longer form of the ad.
He thought I'd be his prey. He was mistaken.
Then there is a shorter, so this is the short versions.
It's not safe for a girl to walk these woods
15
alone,
seconds.
he said.
These are the 15-second versions. Still not the 6-second version.
But I'm not alone, I answered.
And let's see if we can find the ones. There's the ones about Puss in Boots. They're kind of interesting. For some reason I'm having trouble finding those ones that are just about. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. Here's a couple of the 6-second ones.
He thought he was out of the woods. He was mistaken.
So that gives you kind of an idea, though, of what they're going for, right? And the reason why I like these ads is because they kind of force you. First of all, the 6-second ad is now a real bumper ad you can put into a YouTube video. So they were kind of testing out this new medium, and they're showing you that you can really tell stories in interesting ways in this space, right? But the thing I'm trying to push you with is, as you're developing your digital marketing campaigns, try and really think outside the box. Think of things that are quite a bit different than the way you might normally think of them, right? They use a different format. One way to think of it, and I kind of put together on this slide, and let's see this slide, right, is, choose, in this case, this is one example I use in my offline class, right, but you could do this at home if you want. Choose one of the brands below, or choose your firm that you're working with for the class. Identify the basic storyline for a piece of content. Not an ad, but by that I mean just don't try and sell or force any selling. And then identify a unique format for the content. 6 seconds. It has to feature, 500 customers, right? Whatever. And then think about a goal of content, right? And KPI that you might use. And, just kind of, it's these kind of ads that really enable, as we talked about before, the ability for firms to really differentiate themselves, right? To really kind of explore new frontiers that kind of let them stick out compared to the other firms that are out there. Okay, so think about that as you're going forward with your own group projects, trying to figure out how to differentiate. There's another example, by the way, in the paper, and I won't go into it here, but it's great. It's basically an example where they actually, I think it was partially because Ars Technica sponsoring it, which is a blogging, a technical website, where they basically worked with a group to kind of put together an AI tool that wrote science fiction stories, and then they essentially they had a science fiction play that was written, and then they got Thomas Middleditch, who's from the Silicon Valley and other things, to actually perform the actual performance, right? So it's very interesting, right? And I highly recommend taking a look at it, right? It kind of gives you some interesting perspectives on other ways that you might think of to create unique and different content, right? Like you can imagine that, like maybe you have commercials or video commercials on YouTube that were written by AI, right? Or something along those lines. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say about Brave content, right? Just kind of think outside the box, differentiate yourself a little bit, kind of see what else you can come out of it. There were some interesting, let's see what the comments from in Top Hat were. It's a way, I think a lot of you kind of nailed down the fact that creativity is a way to set yourselves apart in a crowded digital space. You need to have new forms of marketing that really kind of capture people's attention. It allows firms to try out new formats and new styles, but it's important to use analytics to track that. And I thought there were some interesting comments about using AI to automatically adjust the content, which I think is an interesting idea as well, right? Anyways, that's it for Brave content. Again, kind of keep working on those final projects. If you have any additional questions or concerns, let me know. I look forward to seeing everything you have put together. Take care. Bye.